Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Canadian Football Central CFL content for the fans, by the fans. And last video, the East review that we preview that we did for the season, I predicted a 30-minute video. Went an hour and 5 minutes, Rick. And now we have the West, which has 5 teams, not just 4. So this is gonna be we're gonna be in it for the long haul, isn't that right?
The long haul with the trucks.
That's right. However, we are starting. Should we just get right into it? Honestly,
we'll start with the most eastern team in the West,
the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And so I'm going to start, of course, just like all the other ones. We're going to start with the list of those who were released.
Yes.
Are you ready?
We are ready.
So, released from the Bombers are receiver Cy Barnett, receiver Ronnie Blackman, receiver Isaiah Coulter, receiver Aaron Cruikshank, receiver A.K. Gassama, defensive back Russell Dandy, defensive back Demetrius Ford, defensive back Bill Hackett, defensive back Isaiah Norman, defensive back Travin Fuller, defensive back Patrick Rogers, defensive back Juan Lua, quarterback Darren Granger, offensive lineman Chris Ivey, offensive lineman Ethan Calera, defensive back Brett McDougall, defensive lineman Colin Cornelson, punter Dante Mastro Giuseppe, defensive back Nico McCarthy, linebacker Dylan Moses at linebacker, I love that name, offensive lineman Chidi Okiki, linebacker Johnny Patrician, defensive back Chauncey Rivers. That one kind of surprised me a little bit. Receiver / running back Jonathan Rosary. That one also surprised me a little bit. I thought he was making the practice roster. Linebacker Trey Thomas. Defensive lineman Taylor Upshaw. Receiver Josh Vaughn. Running back Chris Smith. The only reason he was released is because of injury. And offensive lineman Michael Vlahogiannis. Something like that. Going to the practice roster is offensive lineman Larno Coleman. He was released and then signed to the practice roster after the final cut. Then offensive lineman Kevin Randolph, offensive lineman Micah Vanterpool, linebacker Jeremiah Gemmel, defensive back Michael Griffin, defensive back Owen Hubert, receiver Josh Johnson, receivers Carrick Wheatfall, defensive back Tyreek McGee, receiver Jeremy Murphy, linebacker Lucky Ogbevoin, linebacker Fabian Wheats, and suspended is long snapper Ian LaRue. So that is the full list. And then also something we were talking about beforehand that is worth mentioning is that Zach Caleros has restructured his contract, probably most likely from what I heard, for some of his salary to be transferred into bonuses and free the Bombers of some salary cap.
So that depth chart that I sent you, just FYI, the players with the gray background are practice rosters players.
Gotcha. As opposed to
also, I meant to throw out there that you haven't really heard much.
Yep.
You guys are missing a player this week.
And who was that again? I'm trying to remember.
That is Adam Bighill.
Yes, yeah, we're still missing Adam Bighill. He's still not.
He's gone for at least this week.
100%. It is what it is. It's one of those things where at the end of the day, like I love Adam Bighill, but the Bombers have to start to move on from him not in the sense of to throw him off the roster, obviously, but like we need to make sure the guy who's going to replace him, which looks like it's going to be Shane Gauthier, is going to be ready to really fill those shoes. As it was one of those things where with how much more injury prone he's getting, with how he's much more injury prone, as well as him just getting near the tail end of his career. I just don't want him to fall into a bit of a Jackson Jeffcoat situation. I love Jeffcoat. I know he feels kind of screwed a little bit by the Bombers, but I don't think it's that simple. I think one of my friends kind of worded it the best in the sense of that for all of his talents, it was getting to the point where he was kind of a walking Band-Aid in the sense of that he just was getting injured constantly. So even though he'd play 5 incredible games a year, if he can only play 5 games a year, it's kind of hard to justify paying a ton of money for him. So it is what it is in that regard.
You know what I was just noticing, just looking at this depth chart that I found for us?
Yeah.
Outside of because now you guys, instead of you guys had 6 wide receivers.
Yep.
No, sorry, 4. No, 7, because you guys lost O'Leary Orange, Rashid Bailey, and Grant. You guys are only down to 4 key receivers now.
Yeah, we got Kenny Lawler, Dalton Schoen, Dembski,
and Wolotarski.
And Wolotarski. Those are kind of your main 4. Just kind of gives the opportunity for some other guys to get into the lineup. Myron Mitchell with a good preseason to hopefully get some time in there. Guys like Josh Johnson were decent. So I'd be curious to see them. Kind of unfortunate for a guy like O'Leary Orange in the sense of if he was still with the Bombers, he'd kind of roll into the Drew Wolotarski spot, the number 5 receiver. It is what it is. But hopefully he gets his proper chance there in Hamilton. The D-line took a bit of a hit with, what's his name, getting injured, Cam Lawson. So it looks like Miles Fox has rolled into that spot. So now it's Willie Jefferson, Jake Thomas, Celestion Haba, and Miles Fox. Haba, of course, in the Jackson Jeffcoat spot from last year. As we talked about before, Shane Gauthier sliding into that Adam Bighill spot at middle linebacker. Does it not have the strong side linebacker in here? Or am I looking in the wrong spot?
They have it listed as dime.
Oh.
You want
Yeah, that's weird.
Don't ask me why Derek Taylor.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe they've done some different.
You know what though? Looking at this, because you guys also lost Houston on the boundaries cornerback side.
Yep.
It doesn't look like you guys brought in much outside talent.
Honestly, to be fair, like the corners and whatnot that they have had, assuming they stay healthy, are pretty good. Like Evan Holm, I think, is going to have a career year. He really was starting to get really damn good near the end of last year. Mm-hmm. Terrell Ford got a lot better. He was improving quite a bit. Dietrich Nichols has just been kind of that Drew Wolotarski, but of the defense. Just always been relatively consistent in the opportunities he's gotten. I'd be curious to see more of Terrell Bonds as well as Tyreek McGee. Interested to see how they kind of line up. Brendan Alexander has been playing safety. He's also played a little bit of linebacker. He's kind of bounced around the defense. Hasn't just been safety. Nick Hallett has been all right when he was there. And then Jay Kelly is that third string guy in that regard.
Did you say that Eric Lofton was the one that joined your guys' offensive line?
Yes, I saw that. So I see the way that they're doing this. So Stanley Bryant with Liam Dobson next to him. Great. Liam Dobson going in the Jeff Gray spot was exactly what I expected. And Eric Lofton was, again, the guy that I expected to take that spot for Yoshi Hardrick. And he has. Coleman had a good preseason, which is why he ranks above Randolph on the practice roster for that spot.
He got cut today. He did get cut today.
No, but he got cut to then get put to the practice roster. He got cut then signed. That was the thing that you sent me, Rick.
Oh. Okay.
You did. This is how I know this.
I could have sworn. But anyways, besides.
But yeah, no, he got cut to get he got cut from the roster to then get signed to the practice roster after final cuts. So Coleman is in that spot. Of course, at running back, you have Brady Oliveira followed by Johnny Augustine. Dembski will sometimes do it for when Buck Pierce decides to do a jet sweep, which is seemingly every third set of downs because he bloody well loves that jet sweep, but occasionally it works, so it is what it is. The thing I'm curious about is how well this offensive line holds up. I feel pretty good about this O-line in the sense of Okay. I feel great about Kolikowski. Feel good about Neufeld. Feel great about Stanley Bryant. Lofton, I feel solid about. Dobson, I'm not too worried about. Again, it's one of those things where, at least with Dobson in the lineup, I'm sure there will be less procedure penalties. Sorry, Jeff Gray. Jeff Gray, good lineman, but my God, took so many procedure penalties. So hopefully we're able to kind of wind it back in that regard. Zach Collaros, of course, franchise quarterback, best quarterback in the league. Fight me. And followed by returning from the NFL, Chris Streveler in the short yardage, and then also just a really solid backup. Terry Wilson had that good fourth quarter against Saskatchewan in the preseason, then kind of struggled in his next game, although to be fair, pretty much everyone struggled in that next game against Calgary, so we can cut him at least a little bit of slack in that regard. I'd be curious to see Tanner Schmenkel get into a few reps at defensive tackle. I thought he had some good showings in the preseason. Just wondering, Mr. Rick, are there any thoughts you have on the team? I've been talking a lot about my Bombers. I want to know your thoughts, though.
That's okay. There's a couple of things.
Yep.
So, first off, that offensive line is going to be playing a big part.
Yep, absolutely.
But also, at the same time, Zach Collaros is getting up there in age.
A little bit.
He's 34, 35? I'd
he
say
can still do
probably is. I mean, I'm pretty sure he'll go until like the end of his contract, if not a couple of years after that.
Yep.
It's just like you guys. So I wouldn't say you guys have to do like a rebuild. You guys have to do more of like a retool.
At some point, yes. I don't think it's quite at that point.
No, but I mean, with the drafting that you guys have been doing, you guys could still go with the retool instead of the rebuild.
That's actually one reason why I'm a little bit excited to see how many rookies we got on this roster this year. As like, this is probably the most amount of rookies and the most amount of new talent brought up through the system, not through free agency, that the Bombers have had in these past 4 years. Since since all the years of them going to the Grey Cup, whether that was winning the Grey Cup or losing in the finals. This is the most amount of young talent joining the team at the start and seeing if some of them can really flourish, which is good, because I think if you're going to go through a retool, you need to bring the youth to the forefront, showcase them, and see which of them are going to sink and which of them are going to swim. And so all you can hope is, if you're the Bombers, that even if you can get 2 or 3 of these guys to really swim and do well at that CFL level, it means that then it gives you the opportunity to, first of all, bring in other guys in following years, but then also look towards free agency and making a move there to fill any gaps that you do have. I thought that Sheehan, punter Sheehan, Jamieson Sheehan, that is, had a better preseason showing and has overall looked improved. I'm still not sure yet in terms of if this is a be-all, end-all punter, but I'm not going to lie, when he first showed up on the team, was not a fan of Sheehan. It's one of those things, though, where the more time has gone on, you know what? It's very evident that he's put in the effort. I think it's very clear, and credit to him. Jamieson Sheehan has put in the effort, and you know what? He's starting to win me over. It's not at the situation where I'm glorifying, like, you know, greatest punter ever, but it's getting to the point where this is a really solid, you know, CFL punter, and I hope he just continues to improve. I love me some Sergio Castillo. Castillo's being great the entire time he's been here. Missed kick only occasionally, and just relatively just a good sense of ease and consistency. Benson in his role as long snapper and playing on the special teams has always been excellent, and I expect that he will continue to do so, even though he's getting up there a little bit.
Do you see what I see?
What do you see?
To the right of Benson.
No returner. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that. So, like, Bombers need to get a returner. Lucky Whitehead is still on the market. Hopefully that's what that Collaros restructure is about, is maybe trying to bring a guy like Whitehead in, as no one's got him. And Whitehead is one of those things is, I wonder if one of the reasons Whitehead hasn't gotten signed is because maybe he's just looking for money that other teams aren't willing to give. You have to remember, he got $200,000 on his last deal with BC. He was a star receiver on that team, but he's kind of fallen off a bit as a receiver. Not as a returner, but as a receiver he has. And his role has been minimized. If he's willing to take a smaller deal to be primarily a returner for the Bombers. I could see the Bombers, looking in at that. Who's going to be in there for the time being? My guess would probably be a guy like Johnny Augustine, backup running back. Augustine got a bit more quick feet than a guy like Oliveira. He doesn't have kind of the hitting power, but that's never really what you got at returner. You got a guy who's quick. I can honestly even see a guy like Nick Dembski even maybe playing a little bit. Loves playing that. Buck Pierce loves that jet sweep, having him run fast and drive wide and really kind of force the player around and beat him wide. So seeing him at returner, I wouldn't be incredibly surprised.
You know who else I wouldn't mind seeing?
Who?
Is your guys' second round pick, Michael Chris Ike?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'd be curious.
He had the fastest run 40-yard.
Yeah, no, and that's honestly, that's a guy I'd be curious about seeing in that role too. I was just mentioning Augustine because I've actually seen him play some returner before. Even just like when he was with Janarian Grant, he would play kind of the second returner. He'd never be the guy getting the ball, but he'd be another guy in there blocking and catching the ball if need be. And I think it was last year's preseason I saw him taking some reps at returner. Kind of sucks with the Chris Smith situation and how he is dealing with that injury now, as it seemed like he was going to be the guy after he got that punt return touchdown last game. But overall, I feel great about this Bombers roster. I know there's some people really, really worried about a lot of the youth in here. But from everything I saw in the preseason, I think there's enough talent here for the Bombers to, stay near the top of the league if they want.
So, interesting thing before we move on to our one question.
Yep.
There was some people's early predictions that had BC first, Saskatchewan second, and Winnipeg third that I've seen on social media.
Saskatchewan's not getting second. No, that's not happening. Maybe I'll have to eat my words, but I'm putting it right now. Winnipeg, for all the ways that Saskatchewan has improved, Winnipeg is a more complete team. There. And I'll fight that. I will.
Connor's like, there, I said it.
Yeah. No, so it's one of those things where I think first and second is Winnipeg, BC. The order of those two, I think, can be under debate whether BC maybe captures. Maybe they capture first this year. It's possible. But I think Saskatchewan. I think Saskatchewan's probably at that number 3 spot. But we'll get to Saskatchewan. My prediction. I'm going to show my bias side. Winnipeg Blue Bombers first in the West Division. And I know a lot of people that won't like that. And we'll put Winnipeg at second. Fair enough. I could see them being second. Don't quite see them at third.
So
there will be a playoff game in Winnipeg this year.
The only way that I will put this out there, I'm going to go for second. And here's why. So I understand BC has some players on the 6th game right now that are receivers. I honestly think those receivers, once they come back, BC is going to go on some ridiculous tear.
Yeah, I could see that. That's fair. So you got Winnipeg at second?
Winnipeg at second.
Fair enough. But we will move on to our next one here, which is the yucky Saskatchewan Roughriders, which I will never, ever cheer for. But we have to talk about them for the purposes of this video, because even though I don't like you, Saskatchewan Roughriders, I will make sure to give you your fair dues and talk about all the ways that you've improved your lineup, because you guys have a lot of ways that the Saskatchewan team has improved. Shall I quickly go through the Saskatchewan Roughriders list of released talent? Their cuts.
Sure.
Alrighty, here we go. Released. And the final cuts for the Saskatchewan Roughriders on Saturday was defensive back Richard Adubofer. Wide receiver Geronimo Allison. Linebacker TJ Brunson. Defensive back CJ Colden. Defensive lineman Trey Crawford. Linebacker Diego Fejot. Maybe there's a way to say that. I'm not. Yeah, we're being careful on that one. Quarterback Mason Fine. That's a big one. Offensive lineman Evan Florin. Defensive back Nicario Harper. Defensive lineman Sidney Houston Jr. Defensive back Catley Joseph. Or Kately Joseph, one of the two. Wide receiver Braden Lanus. That one shocked me. Wide receiver Kalesia Lipscomb. Defensive lineman RJ McIntosh. Wide receiver Dejon Mims. Wide receiver Jake Parker. Quarterback Antonio Pipkin. That one surprised me a little bit too. Fullback Morgan Runge. Defensive back Eric Smith. Linebacker Nick Thomas. Offensive lineman Jordan Tucker. That is the list of those who were released. So the practice roster is defensive back. That would be Habakkuk Baldonado. Offensive lineman Jacob Brammer. Defensive back Antoine Brooks Jr., I believe. Is that what it is? Or is that Anthony Brooks Jr.? It's one of the two. I can't remember. Punter Joe Couch. Defensive lineman Zach Fry. Linebacker Jordan Herdman Reed. Running back Frankie Hickson. That one surprised me a little bit on the practice roster, but I guess that's just with the situation having, what's his name now at running back. Offensive lineman Daniel Johnson. Linebacker Zacoby McLean. Wide receiver Dante Myers. Wide receiver Joe Rubostoli. And defensive lineman Caleb Sanders. And then those on the 6-game injured list are wide receiver Del Duncan Busby, defensive back Jackson Ford, and linebacker Nick Weeb.
So they brought in 7 people.
Yep.
AJ Ouellette, running back. Malik Carney, defensive end. Adam McClare, linebacker. They did have Jolan Edwards Cooper, but he failed his physical. Your good old friend Jamarcus Hardrick.
Yoshi.
Jameer,
or whatever the hell.
Jameer Thurman, which that one kind of sucks. And then Jordan Herdman Reed, which he joins his brother Justin, and Ryan Shuvor, the offensive lineman from Calgary.
So, big improvements to the Saskatchewan team. Big improvements. So, and now the thing I am a little bit curious about is, so who do they have at backup quarterback now?
They have Shea Patterson, who came from the USFL 2 years ago.
Yep.
Then they have a guy by the name of Jack Cohn. So,
because Pipkin and Mason Fine were both released, so
I will put it this way. The difference between with what I said yesterday about a certain double blue team.
Yep.
I'm going to say for this team, Harris goes down, Riders are screwed.
And that was kind of why I was a little bit like, I don't know. Like, I thought maybe, like, I guess they think that Patterson's that next guy up, which, I mean, maybe he is. It's not like,
because, I mean,
Fine
even
and
if
Pipkin were great, but
even if AJ has
not OJ. Definitely not OJ. Thankfully not OJ.
If AJ has as good a season as he did with Toronto,
yep.
All you have to do is stop AJ,
yep,
and they have no running game.
Yep.
If Shea Patterson can't play under pressure and Harris is injured, they have nothing.
Yeah, that's a bit of an issue.
I honestly would have gone out and they could have went and beat.
They got to keep Trevor Harris healthy
and got Pipkin before Edmonton got him.
They got to keep Trevor Harris healthy.
Well, you gotta find something to do with that offensive line.
I will say Jamarcus Hardrick is going to help with that immensely. And then what's his name from Calgary? Calgary had a decent O-line. They weren't too bad. It's funny because they didn't have the greatest quarterback behind them, but they had a decent O-line. It was one of those things where he had tons and tons of time to make his throws, and yet he was still missing them. But overall, like this Riders team, they've done a lot to improve themselves, move into the future. Guy like Demario Alford is going to be great at that returner spot, as he always is. He's probably, I think I can comfortably say he's the best returner in the league. I love me some Janarian Grant, but I think Demario Alford's got him beat just a little bit. As I believe he got 2 kickoff return touchdowns in a single game, if I remember, last year. Was that right? 2 in a game? I think he did. Could be wrong, but I thought he did. But
yes,
then,
he did. Yes, he did.
Braden Lanus, that one shocks me. I was surprised because he was pretty strong for them last year at times. But it looks like because who did they got as their top receivers? They got Schaefer. Sorry. They got Schaefer Baker, and who else?
I take that back. He did not.
What happened?
Get 2 last year. According to his stats, he didn't get 2 last year.
Not 2 in a single game?
That could have been 2022 when he was with Montreal.
That wasn't what I was. Maybe it was back-to-back games. That might have been what it was.
Oh, yeah. CFL.ca shows him as getting none last season.
No touchdown?
No touchdown.
Really? I swear I thought he got.
Unless he got a touchdown and they ended up calling it back.
That might have been what it was, honestly. It might have, because that was something that was problematic for Saskatchewan, was penalties. That was an issue for them last year. So it's entirely possible, but Mario Alford was pretty good. A.J. Allen at linebacker should be do decent for them, as well as Adam Auclair and C.J. Avery. Decent linebacker core there, not bad. Malik Carney at defensive end. Not too bad either. If I'm just I'm just looking through their roster here exactly at everyone they got. MLS had done well at wide receiver. They'll still have him. And then it looks like they'll have Peter Godber on opposite sides of Jamarcus Hardrick, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Keyshawn Johnson at wide receiver.
I mean, really, they have 4 receivers. Good receivers.
Mitchell Picton. Picton had been decent in the preseason, so we'll get a bigger sample size of him now that he's on the team. But overall, kind of one of those things where you got to wait to see him pan out. But it looks like Schaefer Baker is definitely going to be that guy leading the charge for the receiver corps. And I don't think there's any question about that.
I mean, we'll see. We'll have to see if he's back to his full self, because I mean,
yeah, even if he's not though, unless MLS takes the charge, I think Schaefer Baker's your number 1 guy at receiver in Saskatchewan.
I would probably have said Sean Bain Jr., but
Sean Bain Jr. Am I missing him on my roster that I got here?
Are you looking off of the team website, or are you going off of the score?
Oh, I am on the team website. Sorry, I literally I literally scrolled right past him. Yeah, no. Yeah, Sean Bain Jr.
Oh.
That I knew I was forgetting someone because I'm like, they got more receivers than this. Yeah, no, Sean Bain Jr. Yeah, no, that's fair. Either him or Schaefer Baker will be your number 1 guy. I literally accidentally scrolled past him when I was doing that. That's funny.
And then the odd one out, Stearns, like he could be like your dark horse.
Yeah, definitely dark horse candidate, and to in that lineup to see if he possibly kind of pokes his head through and see how he does. But overall, I think we're at the point now where do we think this team lines up? Thinking with Saskatchewan, my prediction is 3rd in the West. I think they get into that number 3 spot.
So here's the thing that I have is that I think it's gonna be really close between them and the Green Alberta team, because if
I think that's fair.
I think Thompson goes off with Janine Lewis and Gittins Jr., and then you have Kevin Brown come out of nowhere again.
Yeah, my worry about Edmonton, and we'll get to that, is their defense, but we'll get to that a bit more in depth later.
I'm saying 3rd.
If
I'll put it scenario. If Trevor Harris
gets healthy, injured, I could actually see them falling out of a playoff spot and seeing Edmonton fill those shoes.
Okay. Now, here's the other question.
Yep.
With what you just said. if Harris is not healthy, do you see them falling to the basement and Calgary leapfrogging them?
Not quite. Not that much. Unless Calgary just becomes insane, I doubt that Calgary leapfrogs them.
So you're saying
because Calgary to me, with the exception of the DeMario Houston signing, to me has looked like a team that has just been bleeding talent. In the sense of they've had some talent on their roster that they haven't been able to connect with, and they're just losing guys. They're bringing in guys, but they're losing more than they're bringing in. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the Stampeders and where they're at. In my opinion, they're kind of
saying
the
third.
process. Yeah, I think they're in the process of a rebuild. But the next team we are getting onto is the team that has the potential to pass them in the standings, but we will have to see. That is the Edmonton Elks. Edmonton Elks. And we're going to have another video out. Technically, when this video is being posted, it would be later today. We'll have a video out on the Grey Cup halftime show, the Jonas Brothers, as well as some stadium renovations that are going to be happening to Commonwealth, as well as something that also is going on at McMahon Stadium in Calgary. So any Edmonton Elks fans tuning in right now, make sure you guys check into that. So,
also, a minor thing, their home opener has been changed.
Yes, in coordination with the Edmonton Oilers game.
Yes.
They have moved the start time till 2 p.m.
Their time.
2 p.m. local, just to ensure that those can watch the Oilers game as well. Because the Oilers, congratulations to them, are in the Stanley Cup final against the Florida Panthers. The battle of Paul Maurice and Blake Wheeler out in between Florida and New York Rangers to see who has the opportunity to beat Evander Kane. as neither of them liked Evander Kane. Anyways, though, back to football. Edmonton Elks. All right, Chris Jones, what have you cooked this year? And the answer was McLeod Bethel Thompson coming in when you already had Trey Ford. And we will talk about that in a minute, but shall I quickly go through the list of released talent, Rick?
You shall.
All right. Got a decent amount here. Released on Saturday's cuts were wide receiver Deontez Alexander, offensive lineman Desmond Besant, kicker Vincent Blanchard, running back Jermaine Brown Jr., defensive lineman Randy Charlton, linebacker Raynard Ellis, kicker Dean Faithful, and there's an asterisk to that as I believe he was signed back afterwards, right? Yeah, okay.
That is correct.
Wide receiver John Franklin III, defensive back Marloshawn Franklin Jr., offensive lineman Alex Hall, quarterback Malik Henry, wide receiver Shane Hooks, running back Jawan Howell, defensive back Brian Hughes Jr., defensive lineman Jeremiah Jackson Trotter, or Trottier, I'm not sure. I guess it's just Trotter because Trottier would have an I in it. Linebacker Tony Jones, defensive back Bruno Lagasse, defensive back Donnie Lewis Jr., quarterback Woodrow Trey Lowe III, offensive lineman Spencer Masterson, quarterback Cole McDonald, defensive back Chauncey Moore, running back Cameron Peoples, wide receiver Travis Rudolph, wide receiver Germanic Smith, defensive lineman Jacob Spencer, defensive back Keyshawn Walker, defensive back Brendan White, defensive back Marque Wilson. Added to the practice roster was defensive lineman Eric Black, defensive back Kyle Cass, defensive back Cordell Jackson, offensive lineman Jackson Morklin, linebacker Oliver Muembi, offensive lineman Tariq Stewart, and suspended is fullback Bradley Hladek.
So the interesting thing, just looking at their roster, so 4 of their new players.
Yep.
Javon Leake from Toronto. McLeod Bethel Thompson, the last CFL team he played for. Toronto.
Yeah, he was
Boris
playing down in
Beatty,
the USFL
Toronto.
for the Breakers before
Curly
that's
Gittins Jr., Toronto. So if McLeod Bethel Thompson can hook up with Gittins like he did in Toronto, that could be a scary duo.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the Edmonton Elks are a team that now, with the way that they've signed talent on their offense, we're looking at possibly the best receiver tandem in the league. But it's one of those things where that isn't really the question in their lineup. The question in their lineup is if their defense is going to be able to keep up with the changes they've made to the offense. As you got Bethel Thompson as well as what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? Was it
What position?
Trey Ford. Sorry, I don't know why I
Oh.
was blanking on him. Really simple, but so you got those two guys leading the offense. I'm assuming Bethel Thompson will be kind of leading the charge at starter. Boris Beatty at kicker as well as Dean Faithful. So you got two very, very capable kickers. They made sure to hold on to both of them.
So Faithful got sent down to the practice squad.
Oh, he did. Oh, did he? Oh, I see. Interesting. That's a good kicker to be just kicking around on the practice squad. But it is what it is. It's one of those things where even if you were part of the reason that this Edmonton Elks team really started to have success near the end of last season, seems like Chris Jones doesn't really care. So.
Oh, the whole Boris Beatty thing, that guy can kick a ball.
Oh, he can. There's no question he can. It's just one of those things where I just find it interesting in the sense of where they bring in Boris Beatty, they bring in Bethel Thompson, and it's not bad that they brought him in, but it was one of those things where it's like, really? This was the holes that you need to fill? Like, Trey Ford couldn't have been that guy. Dean Faithful couldn't have been that guy at kicking. Like, it just seemed like they doubled down on their strengths, which is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But they just kind of ignored the issues in the lineup that they did have at defense. And that's where I question it. Like, you got who do you got here? You got Jamin Pelly, you got Jacob Plamondon. You have I'm just looking here at their defensive line. You got Noah Curtis. You got Luke Burton Cron, Elliot Brown, and do you have any other D linemen? You got Antonio Alfano and Sam Ashempong. And
Let's just put it this way.
It's not terrible, but it's one of those things where it's just very unproven. And so you typically probably want at least one veteran presence on there with a bit of name value to really kind of rally the troops and help improve the other guys there. But I don't know. Maybe Chris Jones is seeing something I'm not. Maybe he is.
The top defensive lineman that they had, Jake Seresna, is now in Toronto.
And that was the thing. That was where I thought they needed to improve, and all they did was they lost their top D lineman. And so then, if I'm Edmonton, actually, I think Edmonton, where they missed out is, I think Edmonton should have been the team to sign a guy like Demerio Houston. I think that's where they should have tried to get something. So I do think they missed out.
There's still defense backs out there that they can sign.
Yep, no, it's true. I just think that was kind of the big fish on the market that would have kind of given them at least some sort of a staple on that defense. Because if I look at this defense, there's no one really here that sticks out to me as a massive.
Except for Purifoy.
Except Purifoy, yeah. No, I'll give you Purifoy. Fair enough. But besides Purifoy, I don't really see much that sticks out to me as that threatening defensively. Offensively, I see threats all over the damn place. But defensively, I think this team could use some improvement. But hopefully hopefully for the Edmonton Elks, maybe they're able, using all these rookies, we're able to see a few guys kind of start to stick out and shine, guys that you can then, if you sign them, keep moving forward and then bring in some more guys to actually properly fill those holes in the roster. However, with the improvements the Elks made and how the Elks have been, they got better near the end of the season. And it's funny. The only reason that, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be remembering this incorrectly, but I believe the only reason that the Saskatchewan Roughriders beat the Edmonton Elks in one of their games last year was because the Elks player forgot the rules, right?
Yes.
Yes, because he forgot it. He didn't know about the single point, the rouge. And I just remember Chris Jones. Like I literally, like I'm not a lip reader, but I'm looking at the sidelines, and all I'm looking at is like, what's going on? He's like, what are you doing? Like, do you know the rule? No, I didn't know the rule. Like, like that was the conversation I was watching Chris Jones have with whatever that guy's name was on the sidelines. But man, that was. Hopefully, I mean, if you're the Edmonton Elks, you can't be having those kind of logistical issues because that was a key point in that game. Was that was such a close game, and that was a crucial mistake.
That's what practices and training camps for us to sit there and explain to them.
Yep, yeah, and it's funny. On one hand, like obviously the players in the league, he should know the rules, should read the rule book. I get that. At the same time, when you are a coach in the CFL, you are aware of a lot of guys you're bringing up are from different systems down south that have a different rule set. You should probably sit down and go through at least the basics with them. And so part of this, like, you know, like I refuse to believe, like, yes, the player should absolutely know that. That's his responsibility. But I refuse to believe the coach gets away with that scot-free. You sent a guy out onto the field who doesn't know the rules. Like, some of that has to lie with you. So it's one of those things where under Chris Jones' leadership, how does this team do? I see improvement based off last year in terms of this roster, but do I see enough to push them into the playoffs? Because Saskatchewan had a lot of improvements as well. It was just Calgary that regressed. So with that, I could see them making it into the playoffs, but I feel a lot better about the defense in Saskatchewan than I do Edmonton. And that's where I worry. So
the only way that Edmonton makes the playoffs is if
Calgary or Saskatchewan injury.
No, two teams in the East take a dump.
I don't know if I see that. That's the thing.
No, but I mean, if they're not going to get in the West, that's the only way that they'll get into the playoffs is if two teams in the East take a dump.
Assuming there's no injury to Trevor Harris, then yeah. Yeah, no, it's fair. Overall, my prediction for the Edmonton Elks is a 4th place finish in the West Division. You?
Yeah, I honestly, maybe if they had like one more year to get like some more bodies on this team, are
you seeing what I'm seeing when it comes to the defense being the weak point on this team?
I mean, besides one or two players,
like that's the thing. To me, there's just not enough threat on that defense. No. Even if the offense will win you a few games, but I think having those glaring weaknesses at defense, like when you play those tough opponents, I think they'll expose you. You know what I mean? Is that fair?
Yep.
Because for example, if I look at a team like Hamilton, I think Hamilton's defense, with how strong they've built their defense, will line up pretty well with Edmonton's offense. And Edmonton will have a chance. Obviously, they got a strong offense, but Hamilton's got a decent chance at stopping them. Don't know if I can say about the Elks defense against the Ticats offense. And that's just an example. Mm-hmm. But so what is your prediction for the Elks finish in the West?
I'm saying they're going to finish 4th.
Okay, so we're both in agreement in that regard. So in that case, we'll move on to our other Alberta team, the Calgary Stampeders. We're about 45 minutes in. Honestly, I don't feel too bad. I think we're making good time, Rick.
Dum.
Feeling good?
I'm feeling good.
That's good.
Oh, the interesting thing about this team that I seen.
Yep.
Is because I like to go through social media and see what people are saying about other teams. Someone was telling me, and this was coming from a Stampeders fan.
Yep.
If this team is crapping the bed by week 4, they're already calling for Mueller's head.
Oh, yeah.
And Mueller is the offensive coordinator.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, it's... this is a team going through... They're in an identity crisis. They are.
Oh!
But I think, firstly, before we get into much... are you all right?
I'm just looking at their first 6 weeks.
Okay, well, we'll go through the release talent, and then we'll eventually get to that. Okay.
Sure.
Let me guess. Calgary, rough start to the season, eh?
The first 7 weeks.
All right. We'll take a look at it in a minute here.
Oh,
but
my Lord.
We'll start here with the Stampeders. Released as part of the Saturday cuts are running back Levante Bellamy, linebacker Cam Bright, defensive lineman Jacques Bristol, defensive back Clifford Chapman, defensive lineman Will Chola, defensive back Miko Dotson, receiver Isaiah Epps, kicker Campbell Fair, defensive lineman Darius Hodge, running back Sebastian Howard, receiver Colton Hunchak, defensive back Christian Chochim, offensive lineman Cameron Jones, defensive lineman Demontra Moore, defensive back Brad Muhammad, defensive lineman Cody Rusco, linebacker Shahid Salmon, one of the two. Salmon's the food, but I mean, maybe his last name's pronounced Salmon. Receiver Auden Tate, defensive back Josh Thomas, offensive lineman Chris Toth, defensive back Titus Wall, offensive lineman Brandon Weldon. To the practice roster are defensive lineman Josiah Coatney, receiver Ishmael Hyman, defensive back George Idoko, defensive lineman Toby Ndukwi, defensive lineman Hamilcar Rashid Jr., defensive back Kenyon Reed, defensive back Tyler Richardson, offensive lineman Eric Smith, defensive back Kalen St. Cyr, running back Ton Tiavasu, quarterback Kyle Ventries, and suspended, returning to university. The Stampeders will retain the rights to these players for 2025. Our running back, Paul-Antoine Ouellette from the University of Montreal, and defensive back, Jackson Sumbach from the University of Regina. So that is the full list there.
Okay. So to give you a little bit of a break, listen to this.
Yep.
So Hamilton's in Calgary week 1.
Okay.
Calgary's in BC week 2. Winnipeg's in Calgary week 3. Calgary's in Montreal. Oh, sorry. Winnipeg's in Calgary week 4 because they have a bye week 3. Calgary's in Montreal week 5. Calgary's in Winnipeg week 6. BC's at Calgary week 7.
Oh.
Then you have Calgary at Ottawa, and then you have home and home with Toronto, and then Ottawa week 11. Like, I'll even be shocked if they even win in their first 7 games.
It will be a bloody miracle
games.
if they come out of that 500. They come out of that 500, that's a win.
Yeah, but who are they going to beat though? I know there's such thing called like.
You're not going to like this, but their best chance of winning a game is against the Ticats in week 1. Just because if there's any team you can beat out of that, it's the Ticats in hopes that the Ticats take some time to get used to Scott Milanovich. That's the only win I could see them maybe getting is that one week 1, just because teams haven't properly gotten all organized, especially with a new head coach.
Here's my thing.
Yep.
So Edmonton went through a year and a half of a losing streak. Is this a year for Calgary?
We're staying in Alberta, boys. We're just moving a few hours south. Oh boy, yeah. No, the The Calgary Stampeders are in their Calgary Flames era, and it's a little bit of a yikes. Although I will say, what's not a yikes? Is that we at the Canadian Football Central, I almost said CFL Central, Canadian Football Central, are excited for Wednesday. We will be interviewing Cam Eccles, the star receiver from the preseason for Calgary. He had spent some time playing in the USFL for the Generals and is now up, and he made the team, made the roster with an impressive game where he got 160 yards, as well as I believe he got a touchdown in that game as well, running circles around my Blue Bombers. And so I will be sharing my sadness and going straight to the source of that sadness, Mr. Cameron Eccles. He'll be joining us on Wednesday. So make sure you guys leave comments down below if you have any questions for Cam Eccles. Please specify that question is for Cam Eccles if you guys decide to do so. And that will be posted Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern and noon Central Time. Or at 11 a.m. if you live in the wonderful city of Calgary.
No,
Sorry, had to do a bit of a plug there because we are very, very excited to do that.
Apparently, Calgary likes to hoard quarterbacks too. They have 5 listed on their roster.
So who all did they got?
They have Logan Bonner. Wait,
also, I think we forgot to mention Dakota Prukop got signed to the Edmonton Elks. We didn't mention that in our Elks part, right? Didn't he get signed there?
Yeah, he got signed today.
Yeah, okay, so, yeah. One thing to note for the Edmonton Elks, just forgot it. Dakota Prukop brought in as a short yardage quarterback. Anyways, back to Calgary. Okay. Sorry, we were just on the topic of quarterbacks, and I thought of that.
Okay, so they actually only have 4 because one of them's on the practice squad.
Is that Van Treese?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So you have Bonner.
Yep.
Jake Mayer.
Gotcha.
Matt Schiltz.
Yes.
Tommy Stevens.
Sounds good.
And then, they haven't moved players around on their roster, so you got to kind of guess where people are.
Yep.
The only good thing about the Stamps receiving core this year is they got Jalen Philpott, who was injured all of last season. So he's kind of a new player because he didn't get to play last season. There's Odom Dukes, Tyson Most, Michelle. You now have Eccles, Bagleton, Clark, Cole Tucker.
Yeah, I mean Eccles was able to do well. Eccles, credit to Eccles, he was able to do very, very well when he was down in the USFL. Played 10 games, only got 23 receptions out of that. Was able to get 295 yards, almost 300 yards on 23 receptions, so averaged 12.83 yards, so almost 13 yards every reception down in the USFL. So overall pretty good in that regard. And that is, keep in mind, down in the USFL, now the UFL, as they merge with the XFL, receivers not allowed to have a running start, have to start stationary. So I'm assuming that yardage would probably be up playing in the CFL. So just something of note, just a difference between Canadian and American football that will affect the stat line. So worthwhile noting. I think he'll be a receiver that becomes. I don't necessarily think like a star receiver, but this is a guy that will definitely become, I think, a CFL mainstay and will find a home in the CFL for the next few years to come. And I think he'll definitely be a key piece in a Calgary team that I really don't know how I feel about. And I do view that Calgary has regressed a little bit, but even more so, it's that their competition in the West has just improved. In the sense of the Bombers have I'd say they've regressed a little bit since last year. The Lions have, I'd say, probably stayed the same in the sense of they lost some key pieces, guys like Matthew Betts, and then they lost guys like Dominic Rhymes. They lost guys like Lucky Whitehead, but they have some replacements for some of those guys. So overall, I don't worry too much if I'm a BC Lions fan. But the thing about Calgary is that if you look at the two teams, who are the two teams that Calgary was really competing with in terms of in running for that that third spot last year. Saskatchewan and then Edmonton near the end when Edmonton went on that tear. Edmonton made some moves to improve their offense. Didn't really improve the defense much, but improved the offense. Then Saskatchewan made some big moves to improve their offense as well. Whether that was their offensive line, whether that was their running back core. They've made some big splashes in free agency in that regard. So when it comes to Calgary, like I see some, like Calgary's a team where like they're gonna need to win probably on their defense, in the sense of like the thing is that you have to, like, because who do they have as their starting running back this year?
So it's going to be between Mills and Logan.
Peyton Logan.
Peyton Logan.
Yeah. So I'm assuming Mills probably gets the number one spot. I think if you're the Calgary Stampeders, you got to get Mills going. You got to get him and have him really be that number one guy. Because the problem that Calgary ran into a lot of last year was not that Jake Maier was incapable of making some passes. I mean, he was leading the league in throwing yards last year. But when he's also leading the league in interceptions, the amount of picks that he's thrown, that just shows that you're throwing the ball too much. And Calgary was constantly taking that gamble, and they were getting burned on it, and they were losing some games because of it. And so if you're Calgary, one of your goals, establish the running game. Establish the running game. Dietrich Mills has to step up and really take that spot. And, is he capable of it? Absolutely. But it's one of those things where this is a Calgary team that is absolutely starving for that. They need that badly. They need the running game to go. They need a running game that they can be confident in. And so I think Dietrich Mills needs to be that guy.
Not even that, but just like if Jake Maier can't get the job done, Matt Schultz can come in.
Schultz has been not bad. No, he's been okay. And so I think if you're the Calgary Stampeders, you need to accept the fact that Jake Maier, as much as he's the guy that you want to be the number one guy, there will be times where, I don't know, I believe in kind of a no bullshit kind of a system. Kind of a tight ship in the sense that similar to the way Scott Milanovich runs one. In the sense of, it doesn't matter who you are. If you're not playing your role, if you're not showing up to play, then you don't play. And there are actual punishments for not performing. And I think that's a great way to get some of the best out of your players. Like, for example, as a Winnipeg Jets fan, I love Cole Perfetti. Cole Perfetti won a bit of a slide, and unfortunately, there was many games that he had to sit out near the end of the year. Do I think that necessarily was the right call for all those games? Absolutely not. However, he gets brought back in, gets 2 goals in his first game back. This was a player that was sitting on the bench, pissed off, and he used all of that pissed off energy to come back and play some great hockey. And so that same system applies to a guy like Jake Maier, in the sense of, this is a quarterback that has had like just flashes of glory. This is a quarterback that is capable if he's able to be consistent. And so, am I saying that Jake Maier is capable of being that number one guy? I think he is. It's just one of those things where you got to be more consistent. And to be fair, it is possible. Like, if I look on even my Bombers, I was worried about a guy like Sheehan, where I viewed Sheehan as too inconsistent. In the preseason, I think he's kind of turned the corner a little bit with me. Still need a larger sample size of him, but I think that it started to turn me around a bit. And so I think if Jake Maier can do that for the Calgary Stampeders fans and for that organization, then maybe they're not destined to finish bottom of the West as we're predicting them this year. But I don't know. I don't see enough evidence of it, but, maybe I'm wrong. And Calgary fans, if I'm wrong,
you got to prove us wrong. They have to prove us wrong by winning week 1 first.
Well, we'll see how that goes.
And we know that's not going to happen.
Oh, fighting words. Just a 1-2 punch, haha.
1-2.
1-2. So if I'm looking here, let me just see here. Like overall, is there anything we're missing here? Like I'm trying to take a look at some of their O-line here. I see Sean McEwen, good piece in their O-line. Alexander Marcoux. Just because I remember them having a pretty solid O-line, if I'm not mistaken. Eric Smith, good piece there. Chris Toth, not bad. Zach Williams, he had done pretty well. Then obviously they're dealing with the season-ending injury, most likely for Malik Henry, who just absolutely eviscerated his knee.
That guy can't catch a break whatsoever.
And just really unfortunate, but that's kind of the way it goes with a brutal sport like football. So all in all, I have Calgary finishing 5th in the West.
That's where I have Calgary finishing as well.
All right. Shall we get on to the last team? We have the BC Lions.
Dum, dum, dum.
Don't have your BC
I don't
Lions
have a BC hat, so I got to go with the next one.
Fair enough. Shall I get on to the released list for the BC Lion?
You shall.
All right. Released as part of Saturday's cuts for the BC Lions was running back Percy Agie Obese. Unless it's Obese, I don't know. Defensive back Siriman Bagayogo. Wow, what a name. Defensive lineman Sam Burton. Defensive back Chris Cooper. Wide receiver Jeff Cotton. Offensive lineman, Jean Delance. Wide receiver Ed Lee. Linebacker Forrest Ryan. Wide receiver Jalen Sample. Defensive back Marcus Sales. That one kind of surprised me a little bit, not going to lie. Defensive lineman Demetrius Taylor. Offensive lineman Mia Tahima. And on the practice roster for the BC Lions, wide receiver Stanley Berryhill. Defensive lineman Giuliano Falanico. Linebacker Terrence Gani. Punter/kicker Carl Mayer. He had a good preseason showing, so good days at least on the practice roster there for him. Wide receiver Kieran Poissant. Wide receiver Devin Ravanel. Defensive back Charlie Ringland. Defensive back Jonah Tavai. Running back Jordan Terrell. Offensive lineman Corey Woodruff. That is to the practice roster for BC.
Interesting thing, BC's only carrying one running back.
Yep. 1 second. I'm actually just changing my hats. I haven't had anything BC all day in the video, so.
The other thing is...
Yep.
So Hatcher's gone for 6 games. So you have Cody,
yes, that's right.
Hollins,
Katoy?
Katoy, Hollins, and McInnes.
That's right. Here, I'm just going to pull up their roster real quick.
Oh, and Vernon Adams, because I always like to bring this up. If Vernon Adams go down, they got to deal with the Saskatchewan Rough Rider version of Jake Dolegala.
Jake Dolegala, that is right. Jake Dolegala now on the BC Lions as their backup quarterback. Now, if I'm looking here, one of the pieces I do feel pretty decent about if I'm the BC Lions is that sweet defensive line. Obviously, it's missing Matthew Betts, that star of that defensive line.
Yes.
As he moved on to the Superior Lions and the Detroit Lions. However, still a good D-line even without him. Guys like Joshua Archibald, Josh Banks, so 2 Joshes. Francis
Christian Covington.
Beamy Jr., that's right, Covington. Nathan Cherry as well as on there. Thibaut Dabeli. I'm terrible with names sometimes. Sometimes I'm just awful.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both.
Marcus Moore on there as well. I'm just looking through here. Pete Robertson. He was not bad. Although, I could be wrong, but Pete Robertson was in Saskatchewan last year, right? Because I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Pete Robertson who headbutt Caleros and gotten a lot of shit when that happened at the end of the Labor Day Classic. I believe it was after the play. Think that was Pete Robertson. Are you searching that up?
I am.
I think it was Pete Robertson. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, no, you are right.
I'm right? Yeah, I knew it. I see they still got Sean White at kicker, which that was to no surprise. And the question is, stand back. There's a hurricane coming through. That's right. William Standback is a BC Lion as of this year. So the question is it stand back, there's a hurricane coming through, or is it William, please stand back, as it was near the end of his Montreal Alouettes tenure from those I heard from Alouettes fans. I wasn't saying it myself. I heard it from Alouettes fans. You can blame that.
You know what's interesting, though, just looking at his numbers?
Yep.
He has not played a full season either.
Ever?
The most that Standback's played is 16 games back in 18. He played 14.
So he has Jackson Jeffcoat syndrome.
He had 14 and 19, 13 and 21, 5 and 22, 14 and 23. And he's only had 2 seasons over 1,000 yards.
Jeez. To be fair, if he hasn't played a full season technically, then 2 seasons over 1,000 isn't horrible.
But don't forget, he's also that receiver in Montreal as well, because he did have 3 years where it was over 200 yards rushing or receiving. Sorry,
that's true. I will say there is a decent amount of pieces from what I remember on this O-line that look pretty decent. Guys like Andrew Pearson, Ken Perkins, guys like David Neville. And then where's that guy I'm looking for? Michael Couture! That's right. Former Winnipeg Blue Bombers center in his hometown of BC. I believe it's Vancouver in BC. I believe he's from Vancouver.
Wasn't Chung one of their...
Yep. Yeah, no, he was a good piece that they had as well. Overall, I think their O-line is pretty decent. And so we'll have to see exactly how they hold up.
Hopefully Vernon Adams doesn't have one of those games where he throws 6 picks in one game.
Yeah, I mean, Vernon Adams Jr., he pretty much had a great season and then just had one game where he just completely shit the bed. But it is what it is. If I'm BC, there's a lot to look forward to, and I'm not just talking about 50 Cent. There's just a lot to look forward to on this roster.
Jonas Brothers,
not the Jonas Brothers. We'll get onto our video with that. I know the Grey Cup's in BC, but you got to make the game first before you can start talking about the Jonas Brothers and hearing them.
I mean, last year we never made it to the Grey Cup and we had Green Day, so I mean,
yes. But it wasn't the Hamilton Tiger Cats hearing that. It was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and Montreal Alouettes hearing that. So if you're
fans.
Yes, but your team wasn't there.
No.
So if you're the BC Lions, you want to be in the building. You want to be in your dressing room when you're hearing all that music, or what some people call music, and some people don't call music. I'm not a fan of the Jonas Brothers, but I understand a lot of people like them. It is what it is. But overall, back to football. If we're looking at this roster, I feel pretty solid. I think BC is probably one of the most well-rounded teams in the CFL in terms of having decent special teams, good offense, good defense. And I understand why a lot of people are taking them over the Bombers, even though I am, a Bombers diehard. I understand why people have the Lions going that far. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do it, even though I do think the Bombers can still hold on to that number 1 title, that pedigree. The Lions, I think, are certainly capable of getting it done, so we will have to see.
So, just going through all the numbers.
Yep.
Because I already know the only spot you have this team to finish is second.
Correct.
So I
have them finishing second, but if they finish first, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be shocked if they dropped to 3.
But listen to this. So you have Winnipeg, BC, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary. I have BC, Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary. We both have Montreal. You have Toronto. I have Hamilton. You have Hamilton third. I have Toronto third, and then we both have Ottawa.
So our lists are almost identical with just a swap in the West and a swap in the East.
Yes.
That's pretty much it. Well, overall, is there anything else that we're got to say about the BC Lions?
No.
Actually, how does their schedule look at the start of the year? Let's take a look at that.
Their schedule. Okay. So
because we've talked about that for some other teams. I think with BC, that very much matters a lot.
They have BC at Toronto week 1. I will be in attendance.
Yep.
Calgary week 2. BC at Winnipeg week 3.
That will be a crazy game.
Edmonton at BC week 4. BC at Ticats week 5. Saskatchewan at BC week 6.
BC at Calgary week 7.
Calgary. Yeah, then they have a bye week, and then it's Winnipeg at BC.
So that's their first 9 weeks.
No, sorry. They have a bye week after the Calgary game because they have the home and home with you guys.
Yes.
The next 2 weeks.
Now, the one thing I will say is that I think that's a pretty well-rounded first half of the year schedule. Some easy games, some difficult games, some middle of the road kind of games for BC. I think BC probably has one of the most, it's funny, they have one of the most well-rounded teams, if not the most well-rounded team, and one of the most well-rounded schedules for the first half of the year, and they're not just completely thrown to the Lions, or thrown to the Lions, like the Stampeders are, as the Stampeders are just have an absolutely atrocious schedule to start the year. Looks like BC's is pretty fair.
Listen, if Calgary has that schedule, Edmonton has Saskatchewan at Edmonton, Montreal at Edmonton, Edmonton at Toronto, and then Edmonton at BC. So Edmonton could even start as bad as 0-4, just as bad as Calgary could.
And then at that point, we shall see the Battle of Alberta.
But I was going to say, outside of this video, don't forget to check out our week 1 season preview later on this week.
We have, funny, we have a lot of videos. So that will probably actually be coming out, I believe, the same day, possibly as this video when this comes out. We will have to see. Maybe. Well, we're not exactly sure how we're scheduling that week 1 preview, but we'll make sure it's out and you guys have a lot of time to check that out. But we'll for sure have this video out. Again, on Thursday, we will have our interview with Cam Eccles. And then later on today, I'm saying today because of when this video goes up, we will have our video on the Grey Cup halftime show, our thoughts on that, what that means for the CFL, all the pros and cons of that, as well as some stadium renovations happening in Edmonton. And a new thing new feature they have at the stadium there in Calgary at McMahon Stadium. And so, make sure you guys tune into that. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe if you made it all the way through the video. If you made it all the way through the video, feel free to comment that down below. And also, severe thank you to now the official CFL Forum is going to be reposting some of our content in there. Some of Canadian Football Central. So I'll make sure to have the link to them down in the description below. So make sure you guys go and check out the discussion there on the CFL Forum.
And also one last thing.
Yep.
To the Elk fans, they are releasing a alternative jersey Wednesday morning.
So we might have to take a look at that is what I'm hearing, Rick.
Yes.
Alrighty. Well,
at some
without
point this week.
further ado, I think we will bid everyone adieu. You guys take care. Peace, love, and positivity. And see you all next time.